Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Monday Bible. I'm your host, Michał Jackowski, and today I'm excited to have a very special guest with us, Wei Chen. Wei is an experienced general counsel and creator and lecturer of Generative AI for Legal Profession course at Berkeley Law Executive Education. She's a true expert when it comes to integrating AI into legal practice. We'll be discussing the role of Gen AI in the legal profession, how it's transforming the industry, and what is the future for AI in law. Hey, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks so much, Michal. Really appreciate it to be on this show.
Let's jump right into it. What inspired you to create the Gen AI for Legal Profession course? What key skills or knowledge do you hope participants will walk away with?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much for that great question. I'm going to give the short version, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So my journey with AI really started 4.5 years ago. As you can probably tell, I'm no AI expert. I'm just a attorney. However, I started working with AI with the best of the best people. 4.5 years ago, I started this nonprofit organization called the Atticus Project. And then the goal of the Atticus Project really was trying to solve my own problem. So I was an acquisitions attorney by training. I did in my younger years a lot of due diligence. And then, during the time I was a senior legal executive, I have to pay law firms to do a lot of the due diligence. And I wanted to solve that problem using AI. And then quickly, long story short, realized actually this is a research problem. And the research problem's bottleneck is lack of high quality training data set for legal contracts. So I founded this nonprofit, about 15 or 20 like-minded people to work on these training data set for us. And they quickly ballooned into a collaboration with Berkeley Law. So we got Berkeley law students and then expanded to law students around the world, getting trained by very, very high quality in-house and law firm attorneys to label these contracts. Essentially think about, picking a highlighter, highlight these contracts, but we're only using a digital tool to do that. And then we turn that into a spreadsheet, right? As we lawyers call it, researchers call it a CSV file. And then we open source it, meaning that we make it available for everybody for free. Not only we do open source training data set, we also collaborated with AI researchers around the world to publish articles, benchmarking data. And we also published our labeling a guidebook. So the, all resource in one. And then we also started teaching courses, right? I started teaching courses because as part of that process, I learned a lot about how to teach law students about AI, about contracts. And then, of course, November 2022, ChatGPT came along. And what I did was I didn't get my hands on to ChatGPT until March 2023. So I was struggling, right? Trying to create the third data set, having law students manually label these contracts. And then the accuracy rate was really low, like 50%, right? Error rates. And then I put a couple of the clauses into ChatGPT and asked the ChatGPT to pick out the right answer. And ChatGPT was able to pick out the right answer right away. And I, of course, lost sleep for a night. I thought there's some kind of existential crisis about my job as a lawyer, but more importantly, as my job of like having this nonprofit who was my baby. And I thought we were making such a difference. And it turned out that, like AI got ahead of us even without us. So what are we doing here? Right. So the next day I went back to the law students and I said, pencils down. We're not doing this anymore. We're not doing this anymore. Everybody started, take a week break. Let's think about what we should do next. So we took a week break. Like I started playing around with ChatGPT. And then I quickly realized actually it is exactly what I wanted, right? If we can integrate the AI ability with the human checking quality QA, that would be my dream come true, right? It quickly scale things up. And then as that part of that process, we started, prompt engineering. So I turned my law students into prompt engineers. We start prompt engineering, we start doing all of these things. And as part of that, I learned so much from the best of the best, right? Like I owe forever gratitude to Dan Hedrick, who is a leading researcher in the AI space at Berkeley, and also my husband, who is a leading researcher who is one of the authors of the Word2Vec paper about 11 years ago. So just learning from people who know how to explain very complex things in a very simple form, in the mastery, give me a tremendous amount of advantage over regular lawyers. And then as part of that, I also internalize all of these technical speak, right? What is a vector? What is token? What is neural networks? All of these things. And I try to simplify it to language that lawyers would understand. And so we published a whole bunch of blogs and articles and did a whole bunch of lectures. Then I'm like, why can't we scale this? Let's just scale this. And of course, Berkeley reached out. I already have a course with them called Commercial Contracts Fundamentals, which was very successful. And they said, why don't you create another generative AI for the legal profession? And there we are.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. And what do you think right now? Generative AI is becoming a major tool in many industries. How do you feel today when you created all these blogs and you saw how it works? Do you see it transforming the legal profession, particularly in terms of efficiency and innovation?
Yeah, and Michal, I'm gonna give the typical lawyer answer, which is yes and or yes, but so it's really good at certain things. It's not so good at other things, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to evangelize a lot about what's good and what's not good. Right? You need to understand how the strength can supercharge you and make you better. But then you also have to be constantly keeping up with the times, right? We all know that generative AI is really good at generative things, creative things, drafting emails and everything. However, that has, I don't know whether you have heard about this, Michal, it has backfired. Now everybody, when you look at an email, if you can smell it's ChatGPT from like a mile away. And many of our salespeople started seeing that emails are not getting read anymore. So now people almost are looking for that authenticity. And yeah, give me a typo to show that you're a human. I'm not going to tell you what's good or what's not good. I can show you examples of the experiments that we have done. So I would say, going back to your question, whether it has transformed the legal industry, I would say only for the people who are willing to embrace it for now.
And can you show us some real life examples or experiments you worked about in generative AI field?
Yep, absolutely. So I'm going to share, first of all, just to show you quickly the syllabus of the generative AI program and then generative AI courses. So that, there's we put the use cases in 4 different categories. Module 1 is approximately 20 minutes of video with some content. This is really just shrinking all of the terminology and all of the things into things that, the bare minimum that you need in order to use AI, use commercially available AI tools. Module 2 is use case for everybody, right? This is email communication. This is understanding legal concepts, executive summary, translation, creating PowerPoints, and things of that nature. And then we have module 3, which gets split into 2 practice tracks. One is a transactional use case, like corporate lawyers or tech trans lawyers. You're talking about trying to find and compare precedents, reviewing contract terms, drafting policies, drafting checklists, creating playbooks. And then you also have a separate litigation track that has building arguments, drafting correspondence, research, judges. I don't have research cases or case citation. There's some recent articles, research articles I can show you, has very interesting findings. And module 4 is really for leaders who are trying to manage team, trying to lead and motivate and then do individualized marketing with their clients, business clients, their CEOs, trying to figure out like what's the benchmarking and the trend. There's a variety of good and bad along all of these use cases, and I try to give it a score. So, for example, for each of these, I would say, hey, this is a use case, 2.1, research
Mm-hmm.
unreasonable search and seizure standards, and I have objective, and I have a context, and I have a prompt, and I have the answer, and I actually give it a score, right? Not just me. I also consulted people who are litigators that
Mm-hmm.
during in the areas I'm not an expert in. Long story short, the use cases are millions, right? There's no way I can test all of them and give it a score. So we all know from a just generic perspective. I'm sure that this is not news for people who are familiar with AI. Generally, they fall into a spectrum of two things. If it's generic, if it's creative, something that you're trying to do like persuasive writing or business arguments, I mean, ChatGPT is really good.
Mm-hmm.
When you're trying to have exact things like case citation, extract the contracts, exactly contract clauses exactly like what it is, very difficult. So that's why people think that the first use case is chatbots, just doing information retrieval from a small document. We have
Mm-hmm.
had significant difficulty trying to manage the hallucination risk. The other spectrum is it generic or is it specialized? Surprisingly, almost all legal concepts are generic, unless you're getting into the very nuanced things that people don't even know. So a large language model is actually really, really good. It's even better than me in the areas that I'm good at, right? If you give it the answer, you say, hey, tell me why first party indemnification carve out to cap on liability is unfair. It writes these beautiful, easy to understand explanation that I could not possibly even write. So
Mm-hmm.
very, very good at that. Translation is very good. We all know specialized things when it does these complex and nuanced clauses, it always either doesn't look the way that we normally see it. It's a combination of plain English and legalese, but it's really not the way that we want the legal clauses to be drafted for some reason without fine tuning or lots of prompting. And then the other one is legal analysis and theory, very shallow, generic, unless you do a lot of prompting yourself as well. There's also surprises that we have seen because currently we're working on another open source data set, which is the information retrieval data set for contract clauses. So when we first started this new project that we were going to do for the summer, we had three directions. So the first one was standard things. We thought that it's basic things, information retrieval, meaning that, hey, I wanted to look for a clause precedent because we all know that
Mm-hmm.
lawyers don't draft clause from scratch.
Yes.
I wanted to look for something, either from the Edgar data set or from a internal repository. Currently, it's very difficult to do that. So we want to build an information retrieval data set to help with that. The second thing was we were thinking that, it would be good to have a data set that's experts annotated that can tell you what is a creative win-win. Yeah, you're the seller, I'm the buyer. You say 12-month pay is absolutely cap on liability, right?
Mm-hmm.
No exceptions. And I say, no, you have to do unlimited
Mm-hmm.
for key privacy, like confidentiality, compliance with law, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then we get into this impasse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, one of the value add would be having some creative trade-offs. And I thought AI would come up with like 5 or 6, probably 1 or 2 would be good. And then the rest would be bad. Right. And then we would have all the experts come in. We agree like this is good, this is bad. And then that will be a good training data set that the researchers can do research on. We quickly scratch that because almost all 5 or 6 are reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So for all of those people who are thinking about building products out there, this is a product idea. The problem is already solved. Creative win-win, solved. We
Okay.
just need to build a good product for it. So we moved away from that. The other thing that we were trying to do is this redlining task. As you
Mm-hmm.
know, that
Yeah.
lawyers do red lines for a living. And then we try to have doing human redlining. So we collected 20 or so redline from expert attorneys. And then I'm looking at it and I was like, okay, we can't do this data set because even human with the limited time that they have and without real negotiations, they don't do perfect markups.
Mm-hmm.
So we quickly, pivoted to, right, like information retrieval, which we initially thought is really easy. But it turned out that it's not solved at all. It was really bad. We tried different ways and it's just still not good. And that's when we were convinced that, that is the data set that we wanted to create. So I have been humbled. And during this whole process of learning with AI, I wouldn't say learning AI, it's kind of learning with AI,
Mm-hmm.
that I can't say anything with certainty for now because I could be proven wrong. It's like the things that we thought was easy was not easy, and the things that we thought was hard was not hard.
It's great to hear that you address many issues in your course, but also in your business way. And maybe I should ask you, how do you envision the role of Gen AI in the legal field in next few years? How do you see it?
Yeah. So I know it sounds cliche if I say, we have to work differently,
Mm-hmm.
but we do. That being said, there are a lot of hypes out there right
Mm-hmm.
now. Every AI vendor is going to come to you and say, I can do your red line, right? I have this tool who can do red lines for you. Or they say, I have this tool that who use RAG and it's going to eliminate hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
And the research shows a different picture.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these are still ongoing research questions. And I encourage, like in the past, right, 4 years ago when we created those 2 data sets, we couldn't get our hands to test things so that we have to rely hearsay from either, someone who tried out a product or someone who knows how to code. But now we have our hands on the tool. You can just test yourself. There's no reason why you should hear, what other people tell you. You should just like see it for yourself. I think everybody needs to put their foot down and start figuring out what is the use case that works best for them. There's a lot of use cases that is proven with a lot of usefulness, right? Summarization, the due diligence task is significantly better than what it was like 4 years ago when you use BERT or LegalBERT or Roberto or any of those language models. But it doesn't replace human, right? Now, if you want to rely on AI to do your complete due diligence for you, like you will be disappointed. So having this interrelationship of how we leverage AI plus human is very, very important. That's why we just need to enable people to use AI tools, like, try their hands and then figuring out like what works for them and then constantly stay up to date, on what's happening.
It sounds really interesting. I agree so much with you. I experienced both hype when all the people thought that it's end of lawyers' business lives, and I saw people who don't understand it right now still or are not using it at all. So I fully agree that we should start working differently. Maybe before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or advice for lawyers who just started to explore Gen AI in their work?
Yeah. So first of all, I think people who don't start with AI is mostly because they think that it's either AI or them. So as a rule of thumb, I use AI to do the first draft and I edit at least 70% of it, sometimes all of it. You just have to take this leap of faith, knowing that the end result is going to be better. The work quality is going to be better than what you had before. And clients like us, right, like the chief legal officers and general counsels, they're mostly embracing AI and they want, legal professionals in their team and then in the law firm to use AI. So there's no stigma, around using AI, but there's stigma around being lazy, right? If you just like pick like whatever AI draft and send it to me, I can spot that. The other thing that I know people are worried about is confidentiality and security. There is a lot of misconception. People have no problem using a lesser known AI tool and yet have such a reversion against using OpenAI. So for those people who don't know, Harvey Casetext, LexisNexis, they send their data to these large language models. Sometimes they use one, sometimes they use three or four. They all send their data. They may not log it, but they're sending your data to OpenAI. People need to understand what they're doing and who are the third parties involved in a generative AI tool.
I fully agree. It's especially important when the regulation of AI is starting growing. In Europe, AI Act has already came into force, and some other countries, US, Canada, Japan, China, are regulating AI in slightly different ways. So I think that this what you mentioned is really important in legal life as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks again, Wei, for joining us on Monday Bible. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. For our listeners, make sure to check out Wei's Generative AI for the Legal Profession course at Berkeley. I will link it also to our episode. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
And as always, don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in comments, and see you next time.
Yeah. See ya. Bye.